Namaste and welcome everyone. This is Jim Young, your host for the Inward Way series. We're dealing with episode 11 from With Eyes to See, the book With Eyes to See. It lists, this particular episode begins a list of a baker's dozen of suggestions for how one might connect inwardly with their spiritual self, their highest form of self. They work for me very well, actually, and I use various ones of them from time to time, depending upon my mood and energy level and so on. But I do know that going inward is the real way to know the truth about my life from day to day, moment to moment. So we'll start with the daily dozen of this chapter. Number 1, stay in touch with love. Establish a daily routine that places as first priority ways of working on your relationship with your deepest self. Meditation, prayer, using your work as prayer, journaling your inspirations and conversations inwardly, any way that fits your freedom of spiritual expression. But commune inwardly daily, at times, in ways, and in a place that fits you best. This isn't about me, after all. It's about finding and honoring your own inward way. Each morning when you awake, embrace life and everyone and everything in it. Embrace any gifts of your inner voice likewise. Morning can be such a sweet time when you thank and praise divine life itself. Or thank a partner, should you have one, for other gifts of life, for divinity itself, which is what we are. Include some form of meditation or spiritual reading and reflect upon it all in a way which brings peace into your day from the very beginning. Likewise, at the end of the day, you may want to use your journal to help recollect those things for which you are grateful, and again, give thanks and praise. For those things you might have done differently, begin taking them simply as actions to be corrected, to learn from, not to punish yourself with. And soon the need for self-forgiveness will be replaced by the understanding that a mistake is to be blessed like any other act. Blessed, you say? Yes, blessed I say, because it is but a step on the path of growing and remembering, and like every other step, is a sacred step on your holy journey. Therefore, it needs no apology or forgiveness or, God forbid, punishment. Soon your days will be lived in greater degrees of freedom and the peace freedom generates. If you have any difficulties throughout the day, pause to reflect just as you did in your waking hours. But now ask for guidance, for discernment about those who may be troubling you, and perhaps for self-forgiveness for any unkindness you may have expressed throughout the day. A sudden sense of peace will return to you, and the course of your day will change dramatically, for you will have realized that forgiveness is actually unnecessary, and the shame and guilt formerly associated with the need to forgive falls aside in the wake of this awareness. For forgiveness takes on a new definition, does it not? Merely to change our perception of what has happened and our part in it. This frequent communion or communication with your true higher power, that is your real self, not only brings you peace by putting matters in proper perspective, it builds on your relationship with your inner voice that speaks only truth for you. Your inner voice is no different from any other good friend, and that appreciation and attention needs to be shown for the relationship to grow. We must take time for relationship, plan for it, even schedule it on your daily calendar if you need. It is we who must be committed to be present in it. Our inner voice already is, already has been, and always will be there for us, waiting simply for us to show up. Make it a part of your daily routine, while at the same time responding to the richness of spontaneous communication. Just like any other garden worth tending, it needs loving attention. Otherwise, it becomes filled with life's weeds, distractions. And these weeds and distractions will choke the enthusiasm out of the relationship. Incomplete communication, deception, or deceit of any kind, along with a lack of commitment to be fully present in a relationship and putting all else before the ultimate relationship, all of these work against permitting relationship to break the soil of the soul. When weeds rather than intended crop of relationship flourish, there is little chance for survival. The relationship then seems to go adrift, and it becomes harder and harder to revive its substance. Most of us take time for developing our physical bodies and the left side of our brain every day. Yet, we often forget our spiritual side, which is the real foundation for all else. As you find your relationship with your divine essence developing, simply ask inwardly for help in locating the point in time, perhaps as a child, when you first felt alienated from your inner voice. Initially, it may have taken its form as a result of alienation from a parent as God. After all, in the eyes of a child, the world looms large in all its manifestations. So it is not unlikely that some disenchantment with a parent can be seen in all its largeness as a transference of disenchantment onto what we have called God, but which in reality is our own inner essence. Alienation can also rise out of some disenchantment with the church doctrine, being told what and how to think about life and your purpose in it, rather than respecting the paths of individual revelation and resurrection. Or it can rise out of unconscious understanding that we have been separated from our truth, lost to the workings of the mind that has properly performed its function of recording and interpreting life by the ideas and concepts it hears. In this case, mostly those of separation by which our psyche speaks. Whatever the cause, alienation from our inner source corresponds with our alienation from ourselves, or as we have now come to understand it, from self, for we are one in being. Alienation from self manifests most profoundly as feelings of low self-worth, and this in turn manifests itself in many ways, like owning larger and more expensive homes, more TV sets, bigger and faster cars, and the like, just to be higher on the material ladder than the Joneses next door. It manifests as the wife who says she loves her husband and stays with him in a relationship despite the daily beatings he administers to her, and in the workaholic who stays at the office beyond reason just to prove his worth to whomever notices. Low esteem is manifested every time we let anyone make a decision for us, rather than penetrating the depths of our soul to find our own truth that resides there. No matter how we manifest low self-esteem, it is tantamount to using the externalized, objectified, idealized self as validation, rather than accepting that because we are created in divine life's image and we simply are loving essence. We don't have to earn esteem by bowing to or worshiping the gods of external validation. What more validation could we ask for than to understand that we are loved just because we are the infinite essence called love, and we are divine. Internal validation is a single validation we need because it is the recognition and acceptance of what we are that we honor ourselves as love. Internal validation is the only form that is real. All else is illusion that we create out of fear and lack. No longer do we feel the need to attempt external validation in its stead. Our feeling of separateness disappears in our newfound recognition of oneness of which we all are a part. Because we are led to forget ourselves as love by our competitive lifestyles, we unconsciously fall into the very trap of competing for our self-worth as though what we are depends on what someone else is not. Such thinking causes some of us to step on the shoulders of others as we climb to achieve a place higher than our sisters and brothers. and competition sets in to keep us on a higher level, lest our worth be diminished in our fall. Excuse me. It's the old zero-sum game. If someone else has something, I also want it, or is something I wish I were, then I cannot have it or be it. Absolutely wrong. Understanding that we have worth because we already are loved, rather than striving to earn our worth through approval of others, is a key understanding which unlocks many others. It is an understanding upon which a healthy life of loving is built. So take the time necessary to thoroughly acknowledge yourself on this one. If you do not already have your own means of working within to achieve the desired result, it may be useful to engage the services of a professional psychologist, a counselor, or even better yet, a spiritual director to help you find your way until you are able to do so on your own. Make this work, this focus, your first priority. The results will be ever-changing. For me, 2 favorite poems which came out of my prayer life several years ago say it all. The first one is entitled, What I Am. It is the condition of my heart, not the color of my skin, my gender, religion, nationality, my sexual orientation, even my place in life, that determines what I am. And the second one is entitled Worthy. I am worthy simply because I am, not because of my deeds. My deeds are worthy because I am. Number 2, share and share alike. Life has taught me that if you have a life partner, it is both supportive and inspiring to share your spiritual life with her or him, or encourage your partner's journey. Provide a safe atmosphere for such exchanges of love to take place. Touch, hold hands, hug, simply be open. Begin and end each day by embracing each other in what is, what might be, and what has been. Embrace whatever happens throughout the day simply as your highest good, no matter how it looks at the moment. As we're all finding out, one way or another, it all leads us back to our inner voice when we're fully aware. Embrace your authentic selves, each other's and your own truth. It can be uplifting, inspirational, empowering, and fun. On still another level, be open to listening to other spiritual journeys and to sharing what is happening in your own spiritual life. We need more strong spiritual support systems on this planet. There is much to pull us down and seemingly precious little to lift our spirits. But you will find plenty uplifting in the world as you reach out in the spiritual domain. Should you need a group in which to feel comfortable and supported, or in which to express caring and giving, look around for one that fits your needs. Just ask for this awareness within, and the right group, the right people for you will soon show up. Be discerning, so the match is sure to feel right, deeper than the superficial levels of all too many relationships. Although you may have had no experience with this, it gets easier with practice, trust me. Even the subtleties vanish in short order when we are genuine and persistent in our approach. If spiritual life is new to you, be prepared for your friends and priorities to change. You are traveling on a different avenue now, and the scenery is likewise bound to change. Embrace change. Be enthusiastic about change. Look forward to change. Enjoy change. Remember, building relationships starts with you. There is also sharing which occurs from just living authentically. We barely get to see the effects of our decisions and behavior on another in this life, but they are often more significant than we think. Example is often the best teacher and serves as a sometimes subtle but always deep way of empowering others, and ourselves, by the way. Sharing by example gives people permission to be their authentic selves, and it provides them with courage to do what they otherwise might not, just out of emulation of your example. I'm sure if you reflect on this, you will be able to think of how someone else has influenced your life by sharing their own, and vice versa. A story of my own might prompt you. Several years ago, I made a decision to leave my position as the head of a university, in the eyes of some, seemingly in the prime of my professional career. Actually, I felt something else tugging me inwardly, something else calling me to live a simpler but no less profound lifestyle. Several months later, I greeted a young woman, one of the university's groundskeepers, asking her how things were going, and she startled me with her response. "Just great," she responded. "Good for you," I said. "Well, you're responsible for it," she said. "Who? Me? How's that?" "Well, I figured if you could leave your job after all these years, leave all you've done here and all the benefits you have, just in order to do what your heart is telling you to do, well, that took a lot of courage. I figured if you could do it, then so could I, by golly." "Really, for goodness sakes? What have you done?" "Well, 2 things, actually. First, I've always wanted to skydive, and by golly, I did it. It was scary at first, but I did it, and it was the fun that I thought it would be. Now I don't have to do it anymore. I just needed to prove to myself that I could. And the second thing I did was to go back to college. I was afraid I might fail at it, but I've gone back, and you won't believe it, but I'm getting straight A's so far," she told me, beaming from ear to ear. "Oh, I believe it," I said. "I'm so proud of you. Good for you." From the fear of skydiving to straight A's, inspired simply from an example of another human being. Who would have guessed? I certainly hadn't. We make dozens of decisions daily, many in plain view of others, not even thinking of how they might be influenced, even unduly influenced by our example. The message to me is to think carefully about our decisions and about how we behave in certain situations. Obviously, our decisions must fit our highest good and ought not to necessarily reflect any preconceived notion of how we might influence another. If our behavior comes truly from the heart, then we are living authentically. But if we do not live authentically, we also influence others in no less powerful ways, just in the wrong direction. Sharing comes about in all kinds of ways, some known, some unknown. The one thing is that, more often than not, we don't know for sure how sharing affects another, and that ought not to matter. What does matter, however, is that we care enough to share from a loving heart, irrespective of the results. Giving is the key, not control of the results. Happy sharing. Number 3, honor your brother and sister. Be alert to the needs of others. Others appear to us for both their and our needs. It is part of the law of relatedness. You'll be amazed at who and what events and circumstances come into your life when you are open to spiritual adventure, to going within to live your life. Such an adventure is a necessary and natural part of life. At first, life might seem like a series of coincidences, but as the saying goes, coincidence is nothing more or less than God's way of remaining anonymous. Actually, we need to change that to say, is no more and no less nor less than our highest form of life remaining anonymous. Each contact with another is a new life lesson if we learn to see it that way. If nothing more, in our own awareness we can come to see how we respond to whatever transpires in a particular chance meeting, or coincidence we may call it. Long ago I came to understand that there are no chance meetings. I recall so many occasions when chance conversations were initiated, stories shared, and inevitably a gift of grace arrived on the scene to make it a very special moment. Act on your deepest levels of intuition and compassion. You won't be an intruder if you do. Be a good listener. I mean, really listen. Don't listen to form your answer. Listen to listen. Listening takes a lot of practice. Listen for another's sake instead of what most of us do. wanting others to stop talking so we can give our half-baked answer, constructed to fit our need to be heard rather than another's need to hear themselves. Helping another hear the truth of her or himself is an heroic event. One of the most important things I had to learn about parenting, after all my children didn't come with an instruction manual, was just that, helping my family listen to what they needed to hear for themselves. After all, they have the same God-given right as I do to relate inwardly to resolve their problems, to form a relationship out of the unabashed presentation of the issues and listening carefully for our resonance with them. Previous tendencies would have had me telling them what I thought was best for them, or telling them what I had to hear for myself. It was a difficult decision to implement, but both because I had no preparation for doing so, and because my sons and daughters were used to asking for and getting answers they didn't have to fathom the depths of their own souls to find. I remember well the time one of my sons called me from college for extra money. In times gone by, I would have somehow found a way to provide the extra sum, bailing him out yet again. Instead, I decided to guide him in finding the alternatives for solving the dilemma himself. It wasn't until several years after he graduated from college that I learned he had sold a stereo and camera, plus worked extra hours in order to make ends meet. Talk about exposing character. The proof of the pudding is that this particular young man now has a good command of his finances and is very responsible in other matters as well. Over time, things have changed to some degree with all of my family, and we all are more mature and soul-searching for our own truth. I sure am glad, because I don't like playing God for someone else. It couldn't possibly be the highest good for any of us. The only way the highest good can come is to lovingly refer all who ask for help to their own inner source and supporting them in whatever answer ensues. You know in your heart what is the right thing to do is a powerful entreaty. To thine own self be true is another. Hint number 4. You fork-tongued devil you. Practice being honest. Fear will enter your life as never before when you do, but truly honesty is always the best policy. We often fear that by telling the truth about something, another will reject us. If you are rejected, fine. At least you have done what must be lived, you have at least blah, 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 blah. At least you have done what you must to live authentically and maintain your dignity in the process. Moreover, if you're not received well in your honesty, that tells you more where another comes to be seeing you, and unless, of course, you have been brutal in your honesty and damaged one's soul. Pardon me. Whoa, that was deep. With that caveat, it will do us well to remember that we are responsible only for communicating the truth and not for its result, not for someone else hears it. So don't fudge honesty, but don't murder with it either. As a case in point, we sometimes point to an accusing finger at someone else, emotionally suggesting a serious lack or fault. This can sometimes not only be hurtful, but harmful, depending on the relationship at hand. The truth of the matter is, we are more than likely projecting our denial of need onto the other person as a means of coming to grips with our own lack or fault. Of course, we must understand this means of learning about ourselves if we are to grow in the opportunities that we are unconsciously present to, that we unconsciously present to ourselves. In such matters, we can use this old adage to advantage. When you point an accusing finger at someone else, you have 3 fingers pointing back at you. Recently, I engaged in just this kind of behavior. Fortunately, this time I was alert to what was happening. I took a quick inventory of my own behavior and, sure enough, found 3 cases where I had not listened attentively. Lo and behold, I had indeed projected my own shortcomings onto another person, which ordinarily would have enabled me to keep from dealing with it myself. The task then was to fess up and deal with getting my own house in order, and to give thanks and praise for the opportunity to grow towards my highest self. It has been sufficiently impressed upon me now that whenever I become excessively angry or irritated at someone else's behavior, it is more than likely because I am denying something akin to that very thing within myself, if not expressed in the same fashion, then in some other way. It is my underside saying, "Pay attention, James. You've denied this in yourself long enough. So acknowledge it, thank it for what it's done in your life, and get on with life." Continually working on the integration of such matters into our whole fabric of being leads to integrity and keeps us from abusing others in the process. It's all a part of being aware and living like one who is. When you're operating from your heart, honesty just comes out of your mouth. You don't even have to think ahead of time about what you want to say. If your intentions are from your truth, your heart speaks for you. Relating honestly sets the very example that makes it easier for others to be truthful as well. Harry Truman once said he never gave anyone hell. He only told the truth to them, and to some it sounded like hell. It all depends on perspective. For a while, exercising honesty will be scary. After all, we didn't get to be so crafty overnight. We have been taught how to fib by most everyone in our society. So don't be alarmed if being honest seems harder than it really is, particularly in the beginning. But by merely starting, you have unleashed the love of the universe, and with this power filling you with goodness, being truthful will grow on you faster than you can imagine. The same is true of any new behavior of the heart. If, for example, I have been taught throughout life not to trust anyone or anyone at all, it takes a lot of practice letting go of that old belief and plenty of time to build a new habit of trust. One thing is for sure, when you truly desire that change, circumstances arrive that will teach you the new behavior. You need to be but alert, consistent in your application of energy and commitment to the cause. The opportunities will stay with you until you have fulfilled your dream and changed your life's perspective. For the most part, a new habit can be formed in about 30 to 40 days or 400 successful applications. Give it a try. It sounds like a lot, but it's really not. Allow for individual differences, and above all, have fun doing it. Number 5, cross over the bridge. If anything is pulling you down, seems intuitively wrong, or is giving you bad vibrations, get out of the situation as quickly as you reasonably can. No job, no relationship, no circumstance is worth being destroyed over. Obviously, you don't want to just bail out on a relationship without first carefully assessing whether the situation can and should be salvaged. Also remember that while love is the voluntary obligation to care about humans and things, loving them doesn't necessarily mean that we need to live with them to prove our love. It's a very important idea. In this context, it will be very important to examine your own role in any disturbing relationship or circumstance to determine whether the real cause is your attitude toward life at the moment, rather than someone else's doing. Reflect deeply, with brutal honesty. Own your part in a relationship and change what needs to be changed. Then move on with life, either with or without the relationship. At least you will have been honest. In such circumstances, it might also be helpful to keep in mind that we are not saviors in the sense of needing to save anyone. Staying in a relationship beyond our ability to be helpful, even recognizing that we cannot truly change others, will free us to move on. So, for example, if you are being abused on a regular basis, terminate the relationship. Stepping away from a view defends your internal integrity, and it may help the abuser face the truth for him or herself. Be sure to face the reasons for abuse, for you may find that because of some abuse inflicted earlier in your life, you may think you deserve no better. may even set it up. Be sure to take the time to learn the lessons it must to teach you before you go on, or abuse will rear its ugly head again and again, getting worse and worse until you do learn and do something about it. When all is said and done, staying in an abusive relationship is self-abuse. Just count the ways. Should you determine you are not the root of the problem, then honestly share your real reasons for change with those responsible, so all concerned can learn from the situation and have the opportunity to become free from any guilt or ill feelings before the separation is complete. Be aware that burning bridges leaves much emotional debris and wreckage which will need to be faced one day. From that point of view alone, bridges ought not to be burned, but they do need to be faced and crossed when warranted. There is one major concern, however, or caution. Be sure, whenever there is loss or change of any real magnitude, that you take time to properly grieve the change. We normally think of grieving things like death or divorce, but changes in relationship, location, and job all contain equally important elements to grieve, even if they are changes we would label as good for us. Any major transition needs to be honored and let go or grieved. Most of us have been taught erroneously that in times of separation, we can work out our feelings by ourselves, and we ought not to cry. Gosh, no, especially men. And we just need to keep ourselves busy, substituting another form of activity for the grieving activity, or that time alone will take care of it all. No, time alone will not take care of it all. Not so. Any form of separation needs to be dealt with sensitively, accepting responsibility for our own healing. Leaving a good job for a better one, or moving from a place that has been good to you to one that offers you even better opportunities in your current state of affairs are very positive events. Yet each has elements to grieve, people to properly say goodbye to, and thanks and praise to the given. Those who fail to consider this kind of treatment as important will more than likely bury their feelings, somehow feeling incomplete in the transition, yet not knowing why, not even thinking about why. So rather than moving through loss, we use those tactics we learned so well as youngsters to avoid loss. By treating loss in that fashion, we avoid facing our real selves in the process. Such denial can only spell trouble in the future, for that which is denied is likely to show up in some kind of neurosis, psychosis, physical illness, karma, or as that same lesson to be repeated, learned before we can go on to something else. It is also important to remember that it is not only the objective change that needs to be grieved. The subjective or symbolic change is even deeper and needs careful attention. What meaning relationships and events have in our lives determines the nature of the grieving process we apply. In dealing with losses and changes intellectually and emotionally are very different matters. How to deal with separation requires an important set of skills. So I recommend the Grief Recovery Handbook by John W. James and Frank Cherry, or some similar source for this purpose. There are other things that weigh us down as well. Old habits, worry, and fear are few. Jesus said that our burden can be made light by living lovingly, and we begin by being loving toward ourselves. I have heard my son say that many of us carry stones in a knapsack on our back. Sorry about that. These stones take on what he calls situational gravity. Just as our knapsack feels heavy when we pay undue attention to the Earth's gravity, the more attention we pay to these imaginary problems and incidents in our lives, the greater our burden becomes. Did you ever worry needlessly about obtaining the money to do something, only to have it somehow mysteriously show up in your purse or raincoat pocket just at the right moment? If you insist on carrying these stones around with you all the time, sooner or later the gravity of the situation will weigh you down and crumble your constitution and the ways you live life. The only ways to rid yourself of such heavy burdens is to give the stones away as soon as you recognize them for what they are. Change your worrisome habits or throw your knapsack away. For goodness sake, stop collecting them. Let go and let your highest self deal with them. Your inner voice, as the expression goes. Your burden will be made light. Your back and shoulders will soon feel much less stress, and you will be free to just be. Okay, the last one for this reading, number 6. It matters not what they call me, their loving hearts are the same. Give serious thought to your concept of life, but whatever you do, don't overthink it. That only makes it spiral. Real life is in your heart, not in your ego mind, and thus may well be simply a mystery. Your own definition may not be clear, or if it is, it may well change over time and as a result of the experience you give to life. Also, watching our behavior carefully will tell us our current working definition of how we manifest our soul's condition and desire. Where our heart is, so are we. If our heart is loving, we express love. If it is filled with self-hate, hateful actions too are sure to follow. Listen to others speak of the divinity of love. Read about love. Investigate alternative spiritual practices. Visit various sacred places, but remember that we feel sacred only when we authentically and genuinely live the essence of divinity we are. We are obligated to search deeply to find what works best for us now and as us now, with a pledge to ourselves that we will change as a new me arrives. Continual monitoring of our behavior alongside our intentions is a good teacher. We will soon know that the hour for change is now if we are alert and aware in our relationship with our loving essence. In a more intellectual and conceptual sense, as you search for your own definition of divine, you will come across many other definitions as there are people. It is said there is only one real essence of being with many names. Of course, each of the formal religions has its own definition tied to the teachings of or about a central figure. Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Allah, Ali Baba, the sun god, the goddess of love, Mother Mira or Amachi, Yahweh, on and on and on. Seemingly, this array of beliefs can become very confusing until we come and see the central thread that runs through all, the true essence of love. Many of the religions base their teachings on the divinity of love, and the transcendent transformational message of each is that the only way to our heaven on earth is through love. The symbolic or metaphorical representations of being Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Allah, Ali Baba, the sun god, the goddess of love, Mother Mira, Amachi, Yahweh. On and on it goes. So whenever we hear or read about any of these figures teaching us that the only way to God is through me, what is really being said is that the only way to the bliss and peace of love is through demonstrating the essence of love each of us already is, by exercising the loving ways that are ours by the gift of birth. But we must remember that no matter what the condition or situation, we remain as the loving essence we are. We need to remember and readily acknowledge that we are loved before we can be loved in all circumstances. I find it difficult to believe that the central figure in any of the world religions ever meant to convey that either a formal religion ought to be formed to worship that individual, or that the personification of love in the flesh was ever meant to convey any more than a single, simple, but profound truth. Loving is both the way and the end product. Did Jesus not say, "I am what I am"? And what was it he said he was? Love. Thus it can be only through loving as a way of life, the commitment to living from within, which brings us to eternal peace, our heaven on earth. The only way to God is through me, or by following me. The human expression is divine love. Thus becomes the awareness that the only way to being loved through the expression of loving its way of life that Jesus did. Anything short of that, it seems to me, is a form of idolatry. Love loving with all your heart and mind and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. Thus becomes quite simple commandments for a life, free from guilt, shame, fear, and despair. Developing your own view of the divine is likely to be particularly troublesome if you've been raised in a specific religious doctrine. For those of us for whom this is the case, we are taught, or just plain told, what to believe, period, and you better follow it. What we are to believe is our specific indoctrination. In some cases, we are also taught that whatever any other doctrine teaches is not correct. My own path of understanding and living, love is primarily through the teachings of Jesus, but soul is ecumenical and all-encompassing. I have learned to accept and respect each person's right to choose his or her own path to the divinity of love. I learned a great deal about love from others who practice these different but not opposing ways of their inner guidance. Years ago, I participated in a summer solstice sun dance near Santa Fe, New Mexico. I was awakened by our host at 4:30 in the morning with a wild scream as his alarm, and we trudged, step upon arduous step, to a mesa at the top of the nearby mountain where we awaited the sun to worship with dance and song. Sounds strange, I know, but we did it. The event deeply moved me, and I looked within for a clearer understanding of the powerful spiritual activation that had transpired. Worship the sun god? What have I come to? Have I gone mad? I gave up my concerns in prayer by asking what my inner voice was saying to my heart, how I was supposed to respond to God's renderings, and what was the most important thing I was to remember. The answer that came filled my heart to overflowing with loving understanding. Here it is. It matters not what they call love. Respect the ways of others. Their ways may be unusual, but their hearts are of love, and that is all that matters. You will do well always and everywhere to respect the ways of locals. As long as they pray with love in their hearts, they are coming to truth, no matter what they call love. Their calling is for love and peace and harmony. Are these not life's calls for mankind? You see, we are one, the same. Let not words or names or events or ways by any other name be an affront to you. The loving heart is the same, and the search for truth is the same. Stay aware. Contemplate this. Be in your temple with love and make your own decisions about the mystical divinity of love. Each of us comes to peace with this in life's own time, in love's own way, which in fact is your way. Okay, let's end with that for today. This episode 11. As you know, I like to follow up these sessions with a little something or another. So I will do that again here. And this is a very simple one, actually. The author is unknown, but it is profound nonetheless. Here it is. What screws us up most in life is a picture in our head of how it's supposed to be. Boy, I'll say so. What screws us up most in life is a picture in our head of how it's supposed to be. You can take that one and dance with it for a while, and you'll find a wonderfully loving partner in your spiritual dance, a wonderful loving partner. And so, until next time, my dear friends, I hope you stay well and happy. I hope that you take going inwardly serious and be good to yourself. Honor the love that you are through all of life with all you meet. And so until next time, my friends, namaste. I love you.